Today I'm going to show you the best settings to shoot slow motion on the Sony A6600, and these settings are going to work on any of the Sony Alpha lineup. Also, stick around to the end of the video where I'm going to show you a couple tips and tricks to get way better slow motion footage.
You got to just press record.
All right, so let's jump right into the tutorial. We're going to start off by jumping into the Sony menu system by hitting the menu button. And we're here on the first tab, but we actually need to go over to the second tab. So if you click over on the first page where it says Movie 1, we're gonna go down to File Format. We need to change our file format first because if we open this up, the 4K XAVC S 4K does not allow us to shoot in 120 frames per second. So we need to go down to XAVC SHD. And then if we go to our record setting, we can see now we have some options for shooting slow motion. We can shoot at 60 frames per second. We can shoot at 120 frames per second. And we actually want to shoot in 120 frames per second because that is the slowest it can go. And so the difference between 60 frames a second and 120 frames per second is 120 is twice as slow motion as the 60 frames is. So typically 24 or 30 frames would be your 100% normal speed. And so 60 frames is just about 50% slow motion, whereas 120 frames is gonna be about 25% slow motion from real life, what our eyes see. So we're gonna go to 120, but there's two options. There's 100M, which stands for megabits, and there's 60M. So the higher the number, the more megabits per second. And so we definitely want to go with 100M because that's going to be a bit better video quality. So we're going to select 120, 100M. Now that it's selected, we're going to hit menu again to go back into our display. And you can see that our shutter speed was adjusted to 1/125. I'm not sure exactly why Sony does this because you want to keep your shutter speed at double your frame rate. So if we're shooting 120 frames per second, your shutter speed should be 1/240. So as I turn the dial here, there is no 240, but there is 250, which is gonna be close enough. So we're gonna stick our shutter speed at 1/250. Now when it comes to your aperture and your ISO, this really is just up to your taste and what you want to do. So we actually have a video on what that means. And so you can click the card if you're not really familiar with aperture and ISO and shutter speed, all that stuff. I like to keep the aperture as low as possible at 2.8 for this lens, and then my ISO, I'm going to adjust that a little bit to make it brighter for this scene. When it comes to autofocus, sometimes when you're shooting 120 frames per second, you can see a little bit of the wobble in the autofocus, and so you can leave it and trust in the autofocus, or you can decide to shoot in manual focus. For what I'm gonna be doing, I actually want to do manual focus because I don't wanna see any wobbling in the lens or have weird things happening. So I'm gonna play it safe. I'm gonna go to my manual focus and change settings to manual focus. So on the first tab, camera 1, and then on the 5th page over, at the very top we see focus mode. It's set to continuous autofocus, and we're gonna go down and set it to manual focus. So now if I grab my lens, I can adjust manually. And so sometimes when you're outside or even inside, you really want to nail your focus, but the screen is not super bright. It's a pretty small screen and it's hard to nail the focus. So we are going to set peaking, and this is going to highlight our focus point. So when we're manually focusing, everything that is in focus is going to be highlighted with a specific color. So I'm going to show you how to do that. We're going to go back into the menu. On the first tab, camera 1, and page 13, we're going to see our focus assist. Now at the very bottom, we have a peaking setting. And right now it's set to off, but we are going to want to turn that on. And then our peaking level, we have a high, mid, and low. And so this is the intensity. And I'll show you some examples here of what maybe high looks like, what mid looks like, and what low looks like. I like to keep mine on mid. I feel like it's a good balance between the two. And so for peaking color, I'm gonna leave mine on red because that's going to stand out in the shot that I am shooting right now. Now, if you're having trouble maybe nailing your focus with manual focus, I would definitely recommend just switching back over to autofocus. And here's another quick tip. If maybe you're having issues with the autofocus or the manual focus and you just can't nail it because maybe something's moving by really fast and you're trying to keep it in focus, what you want to do is increase your aperture. So if we increase our aperture to say 8, we have a lot better chance of it being in focus, because now a lot more is in focus, where at 2.8, a lot less is going to be in focus. You have more of a blurry background. At f8, it's not as blurry of a background, but you're gonna have a way better chance of getting your subject in that area that is in focus. Next up, I'm gonna show you 2 amazing tips and tricks that's gonna take your slow motion to the next level. But before I do that, give this video a like and comment down below, how do you like the Sony A6600 so far? Or are you planning on getting one? So the first tip to take your slow motion to the next level is to film something with a lot of movement. If you're filming people talking, or maybe grass growing or paint drying, obviously the slow motion is not gonna have the same effect as if you're filming something like skateboarders or waves at the beach. You really wanna capture something with a lot of motion, because the slow motion is then going to show off by making everything very slow. The second tip is to use camera movement. Now, slow motion does look great on a tripod or handheld, but you can really take your footage to another level if there is some camera movement. Now, if you check out this shot right here, we have something in the foreground and we have something in the background, and the camera movement makes it look like there's a lot more camera movement because of that subject in the foreground. Now, if you see this clip without anything in the foreground, you can see there's a difference. It looks like the camera's barely even moving. So it's important to add camera movement, because it's just gonna take it up another level. And when using slow motion, your handheld shots, because they're slowed down, are naturally gonna take away those small jitters and shakes. And so you can almost get like a slider or gimbal type of shot just by using your hands. So if you've seen those really cool B-roll videos on YouTube, and if you wondered how they've gotten these really cool, smooth moving shots, they're using 120 frames per second. Most of them are doing it handheld, but because they are shooting that slow, and they're probably adding some image stabilization in post or in camera, you get that really cool B-roll effect. Check out our other videos on the Sony A6600. See you next time.